I'm willing to stand on a hill that is unpopular and fight for people and for their human rights.
Yeah, look, we could spend an hour debating this, and I have in the past. But when
not really though.
Yeah,
not really debate, more of an agreement.
Okay, whatever. I'm happy to debate anybody about it. I think I don't agree,
okay.
And you're never going to get me to agree by saying it's the left-wing position, it's the pro-trans position. I don't think it's the pro-trans position at all.
You should just offer a platform.
Okay.
You don't have to agree.
All right, hang yourself, go for it. Okay, politically speaking, this is so dumb of the right wing to focus on this. So please keep going.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion on this, I think it's important to know the IOC basically called the IBA out on that. They issued a statement that said effectively and exactly that, Cenk, that like this was a unilateral decision made by one guy, and no one's seen those tests. But I will say, and I will push back, because I do feel like some of the anti-trans athlete speak is a slippery slope into broader anti-trans behavior and also policing of athletes writ large beyond Khalif. Earlier this week, a rugby player for the American team, Ilona Maher, was called a man because she's 6'6" and a massive unit. And she successfully helped that.
Yo, shout out to Jason Kelsey for standing that lady on Twitter, by the way. I'm a big simp for the Kelsey brothers in the narrow capacity when they only talk about sports and uplifting women's sports. Good job, Jason.
The very first time an American team has won a medal in rugby, and she was called a man. Why? Because she's big, because she's a rugby player. And so when we start to say that trans people can't play in Olympic sports, right? They can't play in the sport of their chosen gender. Then we start to, everyone becomes a cop, and everyone starts to look at everyone's makeup and their muscles and their cheekbones and what looks different and what they think in their subjective mind a woman or a man should and does look like. And so I just want to say that sometimes when we traffic in these ideas that trans people should not be able to participate in sports at these levels, it does lead to things like Jesse Waters openly saying that on primetime television. And I want to just center that when we stand with trans people, yes, even trans athletes, that all goes away and we stand with them no matter what. But you start to dabble and you open up, everyone becomes genital police. And I just have to push back on that. And you've done it.
I totally
you've done it.
Before Cenk gives his cop-out excuse for whatever reason he has, oh, I know about sports and you can't have men beating up on women. I just want to say, this lady's name is Francesca, you said?
Yeah.
Francesca is 100% right. Look at what we were referencing earlier. It's already begun, Cenk. It's already begun. The point that Francesca made already bared fruit, okay?
Yep.
So is this a man or a woman? How you respond will determine the strength of your character. It's like, obviously that's a woman. That's Katie Ledecky, a cisgendered woman, a badass swimmer. Seriously, one of the all-time great swimmers, okay?
I don't know. I don't know, bro. Are you sure?
Yeah, I even live tweeted about her last race when she did the 1500. She left like half a pool between her and the person that came in second place. And that's what they're trying to take away from women athletes. That's what they're trying to take away from women competitors. They want to put a glass ceiling on top of them and say, oh, if you perform better than this, you no longer conform to my version of a woman. I am no longer sexually attracted to you. I no longer feel that you're malleable to my needs and that I can control you. And therefore your womanhood is taken from you by me, a man, the arbiter of your femininity.
Totally disagree. So first of all, when you have an extreme position, you have an extreme position that says, no, we don't ever ask anyone. And I think the Olympics position is actually absurd. They don't do any genetic testing. They don't do any testing. So you could, since they don't do any testing at all, you can just walk in, call yourself a female, not be trans. Trans people are actually.
Do it, Cenk, do it.
Okay, yeah, all right, well, you could say it, but then what's gonna happen?
Rugby,
somebody's gonna do it.
Let's get Cenk in that boxing ring against that Italian boxer.
That's what I'm saying, dude. It's like, dude, I love that. That's a great argument.
Yeah.
Rugby.
And they're gonna get away with it, and then everybody's gonna be furious, okay? It's, all right, I can't stand it. And it doesn't help trans people at all to have these extreme positions. Oh, yeah, don't test anyone, just take their word for it. I think it's terrible politics.
It's not an extreme position. It comes from a position of human rights, and it does help all people.
It's not a human right to compete in the other genders'
What you see there is when what you just saw are women, are biological women being attacked for being trans because of the anti-trans athletic narrative that has already festered and has now come for these women. And so what are the women to do? Say, I'm not a man. In fact, screw, like, I'm not a trans man. Are you kidding me? No, we all stand in solidarity together. That's how we actually fight the right when it comes to their bull crap culture wars that lead nowhere. And it doesn't.
On the Vanguard, we're allowed to swear. Bullshit.
Doesn't serve. Look, I understand, Cenk. You're in the majority. You're in the majority. I'm in the minority. Most people disagree that trans athletes should participate in Olympic sports. Most people don't agree with me. But hell, man, I'm willing to stand on a hill that is unpopular and fight for people and for their human rights.
Yeah, look, we could spend an hour debating this, and I have in the past. But when
not really, though.
Yeah,
not really debate, more of an agreement.
Okay, whatever. I'm happy to debate anybody about it. I think I don't agree, and you're never going to get me to agree by saying it's the left-wing position, it's the pro-trans position. I don't think it's a pro-trans position at all.
You should just offer a platform. Okay. You don't have to agree.
All right. So when your opponent is in the middle of doing something radical, step out of the way and let them do it instead of stepping in the way and saying, "Hey, I'm more radical." Okay, I think it's terrible politics. It's terrible for trans people. I think it's terrible for the LGBTQ community, and I think it's terrible for the people who are looking to defeat Trump. So can we please get out of the way and let the Republicans do the dumb things?
I think if you're a trans person that wants to participate in athletics, just keep in mind, how will this affect the general election, the 2020? Will this help Trump or hurt Trump? Before you put on those boxing gloves or don the swimsuit, just think about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, please.
Well, what you don't understand is the real issues that define our times are not Gaza. They're not the Palestinian children. They're not climate change. It's actually North Central High's field hockey team because they're sending a trans lady to the Olympic qualifiers and they're proud.
Yep. And, I mean, I think Cenk, the only sense he could be correct in is like, obviously I would agree that if the left, if like the Democrats or whatever just made trans people in sports, if they made that their number one issue,
that's right? The Republicans. That's what the Republicans.
That's what I'm getting to, right? Because that's what Republicans do, right? But the left actually doesn't talk about it constantly. They're just cool with it. They're just like, yeah, if you're trans, you can participate in sports. Now, I'm not an athlete. I'm not a physical scientist. We could argue about the cutoff if you went through puberty. How long have you been on testosterone? These kind of questions are legitimate, but still, most people on the left are just normal, and they're like, yeah, if you're an athlete, then you can participate in athletics. If you're a freaking sports player, then go play sports, whatever. We're not obsessing over it. Obviously, we shouldn't make it our number one issue. Kamala shouldn't, plaster that on her website at the top of her platform. But no one's doing that. No one's doing that. Everyone's just acting normal, and then the right wingers are reflexively freaking out and exposing themselves to be total culture war addicted morons and creeps.
You're laying out a hypothetical that is conceivable. Someone can conceive of it happening, but I think the reason you keep having Republicans over and over, by the way, there's already another case of this in boxing. You identified, Francesca, a case in rugby. There are so few trans athletes that the right constantly invents trans athletes to attack. That is how hypothetical their problem is, that they can't even talk about it actually happening. They just keep pointing at people who aren't trans and saying they're trans. In sports, it even not Michelle Obama gets to be trans because they need someone to be trans. The wife of Emmanuel Macron has to be trans because they need someone to be trans. They invent trans people because trans people do not constantly transgress and ruin their lives, so they can't actually point to them. They have to invent fictional trans people to talk about.
That's exactly my point, and I totally agree with John on that, even if we might disagree on the other things. So my point is, at most, this affects.
How do you totally agree with John when he just took a fat shit on your position? That's what I don't understand about Cenk Uygur. I don't know if he just tuned out everything that John said during that diatribe, but he was waxing, and Cenk has not been given that position when he opens his trap.
7 people in the country. So I'm not saying that you should abandon those 7 people. We have an honest difference of opinion on how to help those 7 people, okay? But if the Republicans are making a giant deal out of how much they hate those 7 people, okay, let them punch themselves in the face over and over and over again. So that's why politically, guys, do not get mired in this muck, right? Make fun of them for inventing trans people to hate. You're totally right about that, John. They hate so much that they have to invent problems that don't even exist, and then make fun of them for that. I think that's a much better political strategy. And by the way, I found a quote of the idiot who runs the IBA. He called the head of the IOC a chief sodomite.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, and so look, when the Republicans are like, oh, I love that guy who called the other guy a chief sodomite. Great, wonderful, here, come, tell everybody, because you look so stupid and hateful.
Don't call them weird, though. I want to make a couple of quick points about this specific case, though. So on her and her record, so like when you find out that she has lost 9 times, that could influence your evaluation of whether it's fair for her to compete. When you find out that in her 37 victories, she has only 5 knockouts, it goes against the attempted narrative that she is She-Hulk and no person can stand against them. But the issue with that is we can't expect them to know that, because none of the people, and we can show you J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk and Riley Gaines and Donald Trump and Valentina Gomez and Jesse Waters and literally all of them complaining about this, none of them give one single quantum of a damn about women.
Oh yeah, that's the other hilarious thing about this. Obviously, J.K. Rowling was going on an absolute tear the other night, accusing Amain Khalif of being trans and saying that the Olympics had televised male violence, all this crazy stuff, right? Still no correction. If you go to J.K. Rowling's Twitter, all those tweets are just still up. It's not like, she's posted, hey, just realized that I was misinformed. All these people, including J.K. Rowling, who's like a super rich, elitist, educated person, like, how can you just double down on something that's not true? How can you just keep spreading literal fake news about something without correcting yourself? What do you make of this, Zac?
I mean, what do I make of it? She hates trans people and she doesn't care if she's right or wrong. I think she's just like every other Republican right-wing fearmonger. They have invented a hysterical, non-existent bully that they can constantly beat up.